I don't know about you, but I had to laugh when I observed our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, say that COVID's taught her to be nimble. COVID's taught her to look at the horizon. Naturally, I fear she's been looking too much at the skyline full of NATO and UN buildings, but that aside, the horizon shows dark clouds. The horizon shows that there are problems around the world that are going to impact us because we, folks, whether you and I like it, we're going to go through a period of time over the next year or three where the cost of living, our economic circumstances are going to be a lot more austere. So we should be demanding, we should be asking, and we should be challenging the government of the day. Not so much what is your plan, but what choices are you going to make? Now, of course, in the early 90s, New Zealand made a choice and there was rampant unemployment, and we did crush inflation, which is like a silent thief. But there is no clear distillation of what are the choices that the current government offers. There's a lot of smile and wave, and hopefully they're hopefully coming up with something that they can put in front of us, then we can contrast it with other political agendas. But this notion that the banks are all bad and the banks are disappearing over to Australia with enormous amounts of profit, you can trace a lot of that back to the policies that were undertaken by Grant Robertson and the current governor of the Reserve Bank. If you continue to offer banks, as is currently the case, very cheap money from the Reserve Bank, they are going to take it. And they're probably going to enjoy the wodge in the middle, the wedge, in the form of profits, which have been demonstrated to an almost gut-wrenching level. The difficulty for you and I, who are borrowers, the difficulty for households, is that costs keep rising. So what exactly can we expect to see next year, or what can we see at the moment as an opportunity to reduce costs? Well, one of the key features of cost problems is labour. People can't find workers. Now, if you are nimble, I would have thought you'd be able to solve that problem relatively quickly. Provide access for short-term migrant workers, i.e. from the Pacific Islands and other places, to come in and fill those gaps. They don't have to be, and I wouldn't want to see them all, remain as citizens or residents. But New Zealand is a place where we have to identify who comes here, not who demands to come here and stay and then bring far too many people, and we have a situation where our infrastructure can't cope. So we've got choices to make. For example, I'm not particularly happy with the notion that we go back to euthanasia, massive unemployment, and we crunch down inflation, but at inordinate societal cost. How about we look at those elements that make up the government, departments, the state, because it has bulged, it's got slothful, the size of government has bloated, and quite frankly, far too much of the civil service culture has become disconnected from the bump and grind of ordinary people's lives. They live a very cocooned existence. They enjoy salaries that are beyond the status of an MP's salary. Indeed, some of them earn far more than the Prime Minister. I can't think of a single Chief Executive Officer in the New Zealand system that should earn more than the Prime Minister. So I think when we look at options, we've got to look at the fact that these people are taking far too long and far too much out of the economic pie of New Zealand. They need to be shrunk. Line by line, we need to go through which government departments, which programs are actually contributing durable value, and if they're not in the context of dealing with the cost of living, they may very well have to go by the way. Now, those are the sorts of choices that lie with us at the moment and in front of us. And I challenge you to challenge anyone who has political aspirations or is currently a political caretaker to articulate what is their vision for the future. I'll tell you what mine is. Number one, we're overwhelmed with red tape in New Zealand to the point where people have to disguise often what they're doing for fear of not getting permission to do it. So the Building Act, the Resource Management Act, both are mare's nest. Look with great interest as to what changes, what improvements might come if the Resource Management Act ever sees the light of day, which apparently is going to be legislated next year in Parliament. Secondly, we should have been a lot more pragmatic, and the government should have dealt with the supply of labour crisis a lot earlier. Now, I can understand why Labor felt they had a debt to the union movement, and everyone wants to see an improvement in wages. But when you've got firms having to close down or unable to fulfil export orders, or it's just even unable to serve tourists and serve fellow Kiwis because they can't find labour, something is well and truly awry. Now, of course, the current ministers, they seem indifferent to it, or they seem incapable of finding a solution. Whether or not they've lost control of the bureaucracy, one would hope not. But just those two issues, and obviously the third issue is the stratospheric cost of energy in New Zealand. If you don't have affordable energy, folks, if you don't have an affordable level of access, not just for households but for firms, then manufacturing and industry starts to suffer. We were built on the advantage of affordable energy. We've got the water, we've got the geothermal energy, we've got the sun. A number of you say we've got the wind, and part of it might be on display right here. However, the reality is we need to substantially reform our energy sector if we're to recover the ability to sustain ourselves and become clean and green and power all the new electric vehicles and the host of other things that climate change is going to require of us, or we'll be denied that opportunity because people will not be able to afford the energy. So those are three things: labour, which I've elaborated, energy, but most importantly, demand answers. Demand to know, what is your plan? No more influential hand-wringing and hand-waving. There has to be a plan, and you have every right to see it, and you should demand it. And I hope that you continue to engage with me, because these are the sorts of issues that are going to make a difference in your life, but also the trajectory of our nation. Kia ora, folks.